What is going on, everybody? It is Alex coming back at you with another video, and today I'm going to be reviewing and completing the most recent mock from PFF, which came through a live stream that Trevor Sikkema as well as Mike Renner did. It was absolutely an awesome watch. Of course, if you guys want to watch it in its 1.5 hour depth, definitely go check that out. I'm going to be giving you guys a quick overview right here. And of course, they posted it online. So if you guys just want to see the summation of it, this is going to be where it's at. And of course, in my usual fashion, I'm going to be continuing this English. And it was only 20 picks, the draft, so I'm going to finish out the first round. If you guys want to see a round 2 of this, let me know. Of course, it would just end up being like a billion-hour video, so I just wanted to do this right now so you guys get some good content because I wanted to get it up for you guys. Of course, I've been in the middle of training as well as doing my scouting update evals. And if you guys are not already a part of the Discord, join. Last night, we went over, I think, like 12 or something, or not 12, probably like 7 offensive linemen, watched each game, and I got to watch it with you guys. Of course, we call it the staff meeting because it's the regulars who come in and watch, but there's a lot of really fun stuff that we do there. You guys can talk to me at any point. You guys can DM me on Discord, and we're going to be doing a fan mock draft very soon. I keep saying that, but actually, this shit's actually going to go down because also, kind of a fun fact, I actually get extra credit for having a live stream because it's a setup event because I have an sports event management class. So kind of cool. I have an extra incentive there, and I love to be able to hang out with you guys. So feel free to join. Again, we have over 150 members. I'm really trying to hammer it home because I want to talk to more of you guys. I love the people who are there. It's awesome. I don't need you. I don't need more people, but I would just love to be able to have the opportunity to hang out with you guys and get to know you better because I love my friends on there, but I also want to be able to see some of you guys too. And I want you guys to actually enjoy more of the content because I can't post player evals on here because of the copyright issues, but I can always do it there for free. So always check it out. I would love to be able to spend time with you guys. We literally hung out till 2 in the morning. So just cool stuff. I love being able to hang out there. Going to be doing it more often. Let's kick right into the video. So starting off with the number 1 overall pick, this is the video. If you guys do go to pff.com to see this article, you can watch it, of course. You just go to PFF's YouTube channel. It's probably one of the first things there. But number 1, the Houston Texans went Bryce Young. Obviously, I fully subscribe to this idea. I think he's absolutely phenomenal. He's one of the guys who has that elite processor, and there's not really many of them in college football. And I don't think there's any more than just one of them that have it in this class. Bryce Young definitely makes a lot out of a little. People talk about that Deshaun Watson comp in terms of his mentality on the field. Keynote, he's not the predator. But Bryce Young, like, he can make a lot of plays just on his own. He creates so much, and you really do need to create in that offense because of the fact that the offensive line talent, worse than it was. Even though I like Latham, he's going to be a very good player. You still have some holes in the offensive line for sure. Wide receiver room, we've seen there is a dramatic decrease in the value of Alabama wide receivers. They failed in the portal. A lot of them went to USC. Obviously, there's guys who have went to Georgia, like Jermaine Burton from Alabama. Actually, no, swap it. Other way around. So luckily, they got Jermaine Burton. But there's talented guys who have transferred everywhere else except Alabama. So, I mean, to be honest, they're dealing with a much worse supporting cast than a place like Ohio State. So, certainly a big fan of Bryce Young because he does elevate that offense, and we have seen him in situations that are going to be similar to how he faces in the NFL, where he's able to make comeback wins, where you also see him lose. And it's great to see how a player loses because they're good. Like, I see Bryce Young fighting to the last snap. I never see him give up. And even though he has that 5'10", 5'11", they say 6 foot stature, he still is willing to take the hits. He's still willing to create. And that to me is super awesome. And even though we've never seen it happen before of a man of that stature being able to succeed, especially in the first round, it doesn't mean that it's impossible. And I think Bryce Young really is that guy where it's totally worth taking that shot on him because I do believe in him. I do. He is head and shoulders the best quarterback in the class, in my opinion, especially after the inconsistencies of CJ Stroud. But the Raiders are probably going to cut Derek Carr. They save $110 million just by doing it. His cap hit is down to $5 million for next year if they cut him. I think that's the best case scenario for you. Like, save that money, be able to get a QB. Granted, my only issue is I know the class of 2024 is going to have some stellar guys, and if you cut Derek Carr and go after Jalen Carter, and you're probably going to suck again, but one more year in the future, you're going to end up with a boss-ass rookie on your squad, probably Drake May, Caleb Williams level. And to me, that's worth a lot more than getting CJ Stroud and $110 million. I'd much rather end up being, okay, I have $110 million. I can spend that on the offensive line. I got Jalen Carter, and next year I have Drake May. There's going to be plenty of guys that you can trade for as well as sign in free agency. So I think that's the best route, but I totally understand this is a completely realistic scenario, and I'm not against it. I just think there is a better scenario. And I've talked about that. I go the CJ Stroud route as well. However, I just think that there's a better choice. And when I do what I would do mock draft, 100% I'm not going to QB because I just don't, one, believe in CJ. But two, I also believe that there's just a better return on waiting for the future. And I know they might not pan out, but there's still a good chance that somebody is going to be there. And regardless, if you have a high pick and there's no QB that really excites you in the next draft, trade it away. There's guys who are available. Regardless, number 3, Panthers going Will Levis. And again, the counter argument here put up by Mike was that he's had turf toe and that's why he's been performing worse. And that's a legitimate counter argument. I totally respect that. But the simple fact is he's had 5 big time throws to, I believe, 16 turnover-worthy plays. That is really tough. That's really tough to just get on board with. And regardless of the fact whether it's more elevated right now in terms of that like poor ratio as to the way it was before, it's just like there's a certain point where you have to produce, right? There's great athleticism. Let's look at Trey Lance, for example. Like even in his one game, I believe in 2019 or 2020, 2020, because it was during COVID, he had like 2 interceptions, right? You saw that there were definitely a lot of places that needed to work. And I'm not writing Trey Lance off yet as a bust, but you can just tell that learning curve is really, really big compared to what you think, even though I think Trey Lance is a much better prospect than Will Levis. Younger, has actually had better production. And I understand the argument Will Levis has poor wide receiver core, one of the worst offensive lines. But there's just a certain point where you have to produce. And he's done it one game this year where I really felt like, okay, yeah, this guy has it. That's just tough for me to say I have a top 3 pick, I'm going to spend it on him. He's going to be 24 years old. It's not like you're getting a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old out of college. So I really don't subscribe to that. I know Panthers fans, you guys are probably losing your mind too. Again, this is the spot where it's like, I'm going to try to go all in on Derek Carr at that point and just try to spend this pick on somebody better like Will Anderson. Pick number 4, Eagles going Jalen Carter. That is the best possible move. Obviously, losing 2 interior defensive linemen it opens up that need for a player of insane value. Watched him again last night with you guys just to end off the night properly. And, he does get shut down from time to time. I will say that's probably one of my biggest concerns. He can be inconsistent, but my God, those high-end reps, which do happen 50% of the time, like you see guys like Osiris Torrance literally get taken out of the play. Like they're guys who are getting first-round hype who just get absolutely annihilated by this man. And him paired up with Jordan Davis is a god-tier move. I think that is the best possible pick. If the Eagles were at 1, I'd say trade back and then get Jalen Carter, but I would not be that pissed off if they ended up getting Jalen Carter at 1. I know they wouldn't, but that's how great of a pick it is for the Eagles. Jacksonville Jaguars going Will Anderson. Honestly, it is BPA. There's just a certain point where you have to say, hey, I'm not going to fill the need with a player who's 50% worse than Will Anderson. And if you really think Will Anderson is that type of guy, I respect it. I really do. And I think he's definitely up there in terms of, you guys can see based off of my board, he's number 2 for me as well. So I do think he's just absolutely phenomenal. By the way, I have a kind of a crisis right now at number 5 on my board because I watched Isaiah McGuire again. And this was earlier in the season than when I watched him before, where he was going off against Georgia. And obviously he's gone off against other teams I watched as well. It's hard for me not to move Isaiah McGuire up into the top 2. Like, I think he's that special. So I don't know why. I'm like head over heels for this man. And there's one other person in the world that I'm head over heels for at the moment. Isaiah McGuire rivals that emotion. It's ridiculous. Chicago Bears going Peter Skoronski. I think that's a perfectly fine move. I understand, again, this is not a trades mock. I do hear people saying, okay, let's have the Bears trade down. And I do know that's a legitimate argument for sure. I don't disagree with it. But I think that if you can't trade, this is the perfect move. One, we don't know if Braxton Jones is going to be the guy. He's let up a lot of pressures. I know Andrew Thomas did as well. But I wasn't that high on Braxton. I thought he was a great guy, probably in like the 4th round, and he was a great pick. That's great. But the simple fact is, Peter Skoronski can, one, play guard if you need him to, which the Bears are pretty apt at drafting tackles that should play guard, Tevin Jenkins. But Peter Skoronski has that versatility. He can play anywhere year one. If Braxton Jones ends up being an absolute monster at left tackle and developing, that's wonderful. There's nothing wrong with that. Having Peter Skoronski continuing to build the offensive line definitely is a great way, especially if you believe in Justin Fields, to really give him the best shot of winning. Because again, he can be so dynamic and he can be one of the best players in the league, I mean, based off his running ability alone. But making him run when he wants to and not when he has to might make him that much better. And then you start talking about him as the most dynamic player in the league and someone who can put up 300 yards passing and 100 yards rushing a game. Like, you can potentially have somebody, okay, that's a little bit rough. That's a bit of a stretch, but you get what I'm saying. Like, just give Justin Fields the chance to decide what he wants to do rather than being gifted pretty much one option. And I think that's a great way to start doing that. Number 7, Seahawks going Keely Ringo. Again, I understand like Keely would be a great fit in this team, but one, Seahawks have just shown the ability to draft corners late, and that's just the simple truth. But also, so I guess it's unrealistic in that aspect, but I think there's better value on the board with like guys like Myles Murphy, getting another edge rusher there, because again, you stick to your strengths. Their strengths, similar to like Bill Belichick, where you know if he's going to draft a lineman anywhere, it's probably going to work out. Just that's generally what Bill does, like gets a small school guy, ends up working out. Or like with Owenu, gets a guy late, ends up working out. I think the Seahawks get a corner late, they probably work out much more often than other teams. So if you don't have to draft, you don't have to spend so much capital on a player like Keely Ringo at that position, then go to a position where you don't always hit. Darrell Taylor was not a huge hit, right? I don't know if Boye Mafe is going to be that big of a hit. He still probably will. But if you can get a player of Myles Murphy's talent, which, again, you guys see, I'm a little bit biased. I love Myles Murphy. He's my number 1 player. Then I think that's the best course of action. Number 8, Detroit going Brian Breezy. Again, I'm not a huge fan of this. I don't think Brian Breezy is that special. And I know that's just me. I do. I know that's just me. But, I mean, he's just so inconsistent. He's unhealthy, inconsistent, and he gets out-pressured by a dude who sits right next to him in Tyler Davis. Like, I understand you have the 6'5" frame, you have the athleticism, you're the number 1 player coming out of high school, but when, 1, you don't stay on the field, but 2, you don't outshine a guy who's sitting right next to you, that does bring legit concerns. And there's no way for us to actually see what Brian Breezy is in a vacuum because of the fact there's so much talent on that defensive line. But from what I've seen, I don't believe it yet. I don't. And there's a player that we watched called Jerzon Newton out of Illinois, which that guy's a god, by the way. That guy, maybe if you're talking about like the 2nd round pick, that's a pretty good one to have. Regardless, Texans going Quentin Johnston. Again, I respect it. I talked about the Nico Collins role that he might have to be in. But again, you don't really have a pretty good player stop you from getting an elite level player. So I'm not going to allow that to be a criticism of me because I think Brandon Cooks might come back. We'll see. Taking his captainship away from him was a little bit sus, but I do understand that, sometimes there has to be punishments for people not wanting to participate on your team. So, if Brandon Cooks leaves, I like the idea of Jordan Addison. I think it fills the role perfectly. That's already been carved out there. But Quentin Johnston, never a bad pick. I'm a big fan of it. Steelers going Paris Johnson. I understand it. I don't have him anywhere near there on my big board. I have him probably around, the 50 range? Let's see. 52. There we go. And this is not fully up to date. Osiris Torrance is going to be dropping, as the people who were with me last night, again, go to the Discord, saw. He definitely fell a bit, and it's not fully up to date because of some of these stars that we saw last night, like Jerzon Newton. But I understand the versatility is awesome. Again, the Steelers need almost everything on the offensive line. He can play left and right, which is awesome. Again, he was one of the top recruits coming out of high school. So again, that's great. And the Steelers need offensive line help. I think Paris Johnson would be a great addition. I would want him to trade back because I don't fully believe in him yet as a left tackle or a guard. But again, he's going to be a starter. He's definitely built to be a starter. And I do love what he brings to the table. It's just tough for me at 10 to go after a player that I don't fully believe in, but it's offensive line help. So I'll go with it. Pittsburgh Steelers going Paris Johnson. Again, I'd give it probably a B if that actually happened in real life. Again, I do love the versatility. If he fails at one position, he'll probably go to another and succeed. Detroit Lions going Myles Murphy. That's an A++. Big fan of that. Again, I mean, I'm biased. So I love Myles Murphy. Super well balanced, great frame. He has very good athletic ability, but between the ears, he is absolutely incredible at processing the play. I love his balance as well. Had a slow start to the year, but I definitely love what happens when he's starting to build momentum. Got shut down by Joe Alt, but that's also a guy who I considered in the top 2 of my most recent 2024 mock draft, so I think that's okay. Number 12, Atlanta Falcons going Jared Verse. So I definitely like that idea. Definitely fits that like 245 plus mold that the Falcons could definitely use. He's a very athletic player. He is dealing with an injury right now with his ankle, so I could tell that's why he's been a little bit less productive, but you see the flashes. When he's healthy, my God, this guy's a beast. So as you guys can also see, he is number 8 on my big board. I'm going to be a little bit partial to him as well. I mean, that's kind of the whole entire reason why I have my big board up there, so you guys know what I feel about players. So Jared Verse, really good player. Again, I like the idea of going after a corner 2 for Atlanta because of the fact that this edge class is ridiculous. So you can get a really good player that's maybe 90% of Jared Verse in the second versus you might get 70% of the corner that you draft here in the second. Cardinals going Bijan. I mean, it's tough for me to say that this is the right move because you need offensive line, you need defense in terms of corners, maybe even a linebacker, defensive interior, which I wouldn't draft here anyway, but I just think there's better needs than Bijan, and this running back class is super deep, so you can just get whoever the hell you want in the second round and be like, even 80% of Bijan is perfectly fine in the NFL, still very productive. But again, I understand because he is supposed to be like top 10 on everybody's big board. He's not on mine. I think he's an absolute lightning in a bottle. But he's at a very low value position. It's very hard to believe that he's worth a second contract if he is going to be running the amount that he probably should, given his unique ability. And I just don't know if Bijan can maintain that type of ability through 5 years, through 6, through 10 years of a contract. Then it's starting to be like, okay, why did we spend a first round pick on him if you're outside of the strike zone for a Super Bowl? So that's my only issue right there. He is still a phenomenal player, so I'm not going to get super butthurt about it. I'd still give it like a B- because he's a great player. It really depends on what you do in the next rounds. So Green Bay going Michael Mayer. Again, I'm not as high on Michael Mayer, but I totally understand that this guy has been hinted at as being a monster. He probably isn't going to be drafted here because even Trevor Sikkema recognized that he's probably not going to test well. He's not super athletic, and that's something that I don't really like about him. I want a guy who can separate, but get the ball in the guy's hands, he is going to be spectacular, and I'd be perfectly happy with him going to the Green Bay Packers. I'd hope they'd trade back, but I don't really mind. I don't mind that much. Colts going Tanner McKee. I know that PFF has a big one for Tanner McKee, so I'm going to try to see it through their lens, but one, they didn't really discuss where Derek Carr is going to go, and I respect that because, you're totally altering your mock draft based off of an assumption. So if he is not here, I do believe that quarterback should be on the table. However, again, I understand because they have him at number 17 at a high value position. It makes sense why they did it. But looking at it through my lens, I think offensive line got to be the number one priority because the quarterbacks just aren't worth it at this point. They aren't. I don't think Tanner McKee's worth it. I don't think Hendon Hooker's worth it at number 15 overall. I do think there's some star offensive tackles that could definitely be inserted into this team and just totally elevate it. Again, I don't think Tanner McKee is going to be the identity of a team. I think Jonathan Taylor could be. So if you want to build your run game, build the offensive line. Win the trench battle, then whoever's playing quarterback is going to have a hell of a lot better of a time. So for me, that's where I would go. And I do think Derek Carr is going to be the guy there. So being able to get him and just pay him whatever you want is certainly going to be probably the best use of your capital. Number 16, pick 16 to the Washington Commanders, Joey Porter. Oh, as y'all can see, I'm a little bit of a fan of Joey Porter here, number 3 overall on my big board. I'm going to scroll down a little bit so that you guys can see a little bit more. Obviously, Jalen Jones, I'm a huge fan of as well, so I'm going to leave him right there. But Joey Porter, he's 6'2", 6'3", long arms like Kevin Durant. His hands are going below his knees, so you already know his wingspan's going to be ridiculous. He's probably going to run the 4.4s, so that's, again, incredible. Field awareness, top-notch. Really grabby, which is kind of a thing where I'm not a huge fan of guys who are really grabby, but he's grabby not because he sucks, but because he's just really aggressive. And I do like that. That's what I liked about Tyson Campbell. He grabbed a lot, but you could tell that he can still have skin tight coverage. And even now, you can tell Tyson has become the best corner on the Jaguars. That's usually what happens when you start getting comfortable in the NFL. You grab because you're insecure. But if you still show that talent, in a couple years, you're going to get more comfortable. And then that grabbing is just going to start becoming part of the hand fighting. And then it becomes you always be in position because you're always close. And then you're winning the press battle. And then now you're getting interceptions, PBUs. I think that's a logical breakdown of what's going to happen with Joey Porter here. I love him to the Washington Commanders because I do think that he's a great fit. Chargers going Jordan Addison. I love it. Big fan of that pick. That's what I did for my most recent mock draft with Broshmo. Go check it out on his channel. Bengals going Olu Fashanu. Again, he's 19 right now, going to be 20 when he's in the NFL. His birthday's in December, too, so he's going to be, he's not even going to be turning 21. I don't know if he's 19 right now. He is. He's going to turn 20. He's not going to turn 21 until pretty much playoff time. So really young. I think that if he gets this type of grade, top 20, he should come out. Otherwise, why not just be a top 5 pick in the 2024 draft and compete with Joe Alt? Regardless, it's tough for me to say, hey, like we have a lack of power with an inconsistency with Jonah Williams. So let's get a guy who doesn't exactly have that power and has inconsistencies like Olu Fashanu. Like that's something that they also talked about on the podcast. So I would say that's my big pushback for him is, I don't like the inconsistencies and he's super young. You're going to be throwing him again, like into the wolves. TJ Watt and Myles Garrett are going to eat him up. Obviously, probably the 2 best edge rushers in the league right now. There's not much debate on that, but I mean, still, they're pretty much 1-2. So you're putting a 19/20/21-year-old against those guys who's only had 1 year of starting. It's going to be rough. And you really want to protect Joe Burrow. I'd rather have a more seasoned veteran than a guy like Olu Fashanu for this team. But again, the talent is off the charts for the amount of experience he has. So I understand why people love him. I just want to say pump the brakes a little bit because of the fact that he's going to get exposed. And that's going to suck because I really don't want Olu to get exposed. I want him to be an awesome offensive lineman because I'm kind of tired of seeing these defensive players just absolutely manhandling every single tackle that they face. So that's where I'm at right there. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tyree Wilson. He's a super freak. Just athletically, he's off the charts, 6'6", 275, and he hits 50 pressures on the year. There it is. I mean, he's consistent, and he's gotten better each game. I'm a big fan of what he brings to the table, potentially. I know they went after Logan Hall before, but one, I wasn't very high on Logan Hall. I'm a little bit anti-biased there. But Tyree Wilson just does bring that unique, that unicorn aspect. You don't see guys who are built like that very often who can produce consistently. Because I talk about, Brian Breesy having a unique frame, but not producing. I want to put in that there's consistency as well here. And then pick number 20, the last one that they did, Trent Simpson to the Broncos. I think that's perfectly fine. Super huge athlete who could definitely he's really good in terms of pass rush as well. I know that his grade definitely doesn't say that he's that good of a player. It says he's a nice coverage player and he has a nice overall grade, but I think his play is a little bit more than just pure nice. Again, he's going to test out crazily. I love that pick for the Broncos. Let's get right into the mock draft. Let's do it. Okay, so now that I've actually uploaded the mock draft and finally loaded it all up, let's continue on. The Patriots are sitting here at pick 21. Again, I think it's down to offensive tackle as well as wide receiver at the moment. Again, you either have to help out the offense in winning the trench battle or through the air, and I want to see the tackles on the board. There's so many good ones, and I love all of them. And I want to talk about Cody Mock and Graham Barton on probably my next mock draft, but I studied both of them. Bottom line, Graham I do have above Cody, but the only issue is Cody's tape was him pretty much blocking linebackers. It's a weird system there at North Dakota. But still, if you're sitting here, you're the Patriots, I don't think you go and try to replace a Georgia tackle and Isaiah Wynn with another Georgia tackle. Maybe that's just stupid-ass logic, and if that is, I understand. But I really like Anton. He did slip up recently, starting allowing a little more pressure than especially Broderick Jones, but he has experience, multiple years starting at both left, and he has played right tackle as well. I do like that. I like being able to see a guy who can play all across the offensive line because offensive line injuries happen all the time. And if you have a reliable player like Anton who can move to different spots, To me, that's worth a little bit more, especially when the New England Patriots need to start locking down. Anton Harrison is going to be that guy for me. Pick number 22 for the Seahawks. Let's see. Let's see if I can scroll down for you guys, show you a little bit more. We've got Jalen Jones on the board. Would love to take him sometime in here, as well as Christian Gonzalez. So I'll scroll down a little bit more so you guys get to see more. Pick number 22. We already got Keely Ringo, which again, I disagree with solely because I don't think it's very realistic. And I don't know if they're exactly drafting for pure realism. Obviously, there should be a hybrid, right? So I think, again, interior offensive line should be at least in consideration, but based on my study of Osiris Torrance, I don't really think there's a guy within range. So I'm going to ignore that. I like going after a linebacker here if I can. I love Trent Simpson. I think he should be like the pick if he's here, but he's not. He was pick number 20. Drew Sanders certainly is a guy who I would consider because, again, he has that big frame. He's been up to 250 as well, so you know he could put it on him. But I mean, man, it's tough because I do want to look at an edge rusher here. There's so many good ones that it's almost impossible to say no. And I'm gonna show some love here to one of my favorite players. It's not Lucas Van Ness. Y'all know exactly who I'm talking about. It's McGuire. Number 5 on my board. I damn near want to put him in the top 2. He's at number 5. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Same school colors. Missouri's edge rusher, Isaiah McGuire, 275. He might run into the high 4.4s at 275. He is that athletic, and I've seen him bend almost like a 240-pounder. To me, that's pretty damn special. He has unique ability. I know I'm the biggest fanboy of him on the entire planet. However, I'm going to put my name on it. This guy's going to be a perennial star in the NFL. He's definitely going to be one of those guys where if he doesn't get drafted in the first or the second, people are going to be like, how did people not see this? Because honestly, just watch any game from Missouri. This guy is lighting it up. I'm a huge fan. So number 23, the Jets. I do think offensive line should also be a big priority for this team. Broderick Jones is here. I don't think you have to overthink it. Your tackles have never been healthy. Fant can play right tackle as well as left. If you want to bring him back and keep him there for a long time, you can. But regardless, one of those tackle spots needs to be filled. I'm not going to trust Mekhi Becton to come back and be able to be healthy when he's clearly never been healthy. So, again, I'm going to go Broderick Jones here. You got to at least do something. Elijah Vera Tucker can't play everywhere. Pick number 24. Again, this is my dream pick for this team. Brian Branch. So, I know it says corner here, but this guy really is going to be a super dynamic safety. I think that he's going to be taking it to the next level. You see the athleticism and the big-time playability. If he's with the right mentors or in the right system, which we've seen that, hell, Jordan Poyer as well as Micah Hyde, they've both been able to have great success even as their years have gone on and they've gotten older. They're still playing at a very high level. I think that shows great coaching and great consistency in terms of the scheme where I think Brian Branch can be utilized very well. So pick number 25, this got to be Cam Smith. Jalen Jones is in the mix, but Cam Smith feels like a true Raven. I'm definitely going to be doing it. Marcus Peters probably shouldn't be brought back, and he costs a lot of money. It's a high-value position. You can address it in the draft for a lot cheaper with a player who potentially could be a similar build and a similar production level to Marcus Peters. Pick number 26, Cowboys. I do think corner should also be on the board for this team, but I also want to look at the potential wide receivers. Jackson Smith and Jigba would be absolutely perfect for them. He'd be perfect for the Ravens as well, but I don't think that it's as paramount because there's a lot of wide receivers in this class. Versus Dallas, offense should be their identity, and wide receivers, in my opinion, is a little bit more glaring for the Cowboys than it is for the Ravens. I think someone like Justin Shorter could be a second or a third round option that provides almost as much value as Jackson Smith and Jigba does, even in the first. So I think that's a better value system for the Ravens specifically. The Cowboys, again, I think that if you're trying to maximize Dak, Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be a great guy to have on your team. Pick number 27. I think offensive line as well as wide receiver could be major positions for the Tennessee Titans. Again, offensive line just always is a position in the NFL to address. I really do think that offensive line is something, even if you have a Pro Bowl offensive tackle, you should probably still get him because one, he's probably going to get hurt. But two, we don't see that many tackles become Pro Bowlers every single year. Of course, there's some of those few that remain all pros. So, shout out to Terran Armstead. But at pick number 27, I don't really see many offensive tackles that I'm a huge fan of except Javon Foster. That's who I'm keeping in the back of my mind. I really like the idea of Josh Downs or Kayshon Boutte on this team. I want to get a guy who has a little more speed. Both these guys are going to be running the 4.4s, if not 4.3s. So I'm going to go Kayshon Boutte. I do like his complement to Treylon Burks because Treylon definitely 4.55. I think he's going to run the 4.4s, to be honest, but definitely that bigger build. Kayshon's a little bit more of that finesse route runner, super slick, super smooth, great after the catch, similar to Treylon, but just in a different style. So I love that ability. Again, if Malik is going to be your guy, you want someone who can get open short and get pretty wide open until Malik kind of tones his cannon down. So Kayshon's going to be a great guy for that. You have someone to throw the ball up to with Treylon, and now you have a guy who's going to be a couple yards of separation with Kayshon Boutte. That's a good foundation for a future star wide receiver core. Pick number 28. Again, I'm not factoring in Anthony Richardson into these mock drafts. I don't think that's fair because, I mean, if you really want to, that would be the pick for me right here. That would damn near be the pick for a lot of these teams that are potentially quarterback hungry. Like, I would personally want Anthony Richardson on my team. His flashes are god tier. His misses are awful. But if we're talking about Will Levis in the top 3, let's look in the mirror for a second and say, hey, can I get Will Levis, but more athletic, a lot younger, with a lot more potential? Yes. You can get him in the exact same class. But one of them's number 3, one of them's not even in the top 100. That is something for another day. But at this spot, I think corner definitely, y'all should look at a corner. Oh, sorry, that sounded awful. Pause. But Christian Gonzalez, top 10 player on my board. I'm such a big fan of him. Honestly, you could swap it with the Ravens. I low-key regret going Cam Smith over Christian Gonzalez, but either way, I think both would work. So pick your poison. Christian Gonzalez is just such a monster. He's, number 10 on my board? Yeah. No, I'm such a big fan of that guy. Pick number 29. So, again, this is another team. If Kayshon Boutte were here, whoo, man, that's a perfect pick for me. I love Kayshon to this team, but that's not the case. I know that DB isn't necessarily the best with Jalen Jones fit for this team, but he's great in press. I think he's still going to run. He's projected a 4.48. That's perfectly fine. As long as you're below 4.5, I think I'm willing to take you because if you're smart enough, you can make up that physical difference with your mental capabilities. If you react 0.1 seconds faster, you might have an extra step that you would need versus a guy who reacts a little slower, but he's faster so he can make up the ground. I think that Jalen Jones has that intellect. He is, again, number 7 on my board. I personally would want him on my team. Worst case scenario, he could drop back and be a safety if he's that unathletic for you guys, which he won't be at 4.48. He's still going to be special, and Patrick Peterson would be a great mentor for him. He's allowed 70 yards on the season, and he allowed 38 in his first game. It's ridiculous. Pick number 30 for the Chiefs. So offensive tackle is going to be the way I go. I'm going to do it. You guys have been crying for offensive tackle. I'm going to give it to you. And it's not going to be Matt Bergeron. It is going to be Javon Foster, hyper-athletic tackle who has been improving week after week. Again, I want to see him improve upon his mistakes more than just perfect his strengths. That's my big knock on him right now. But he's a very talented tackle. He's going to test out of his mind, and he's a beast in the run game. So, Patrick Mahomes already has to deal, he's already been able to deal with some offensive line issues in the past. I think that he'll be able to deal with the growing pains if the running game is established properly. And then last but not least, the Eagles. After drafting a star in Jalen Carter, we're going to end this off probably with going after an edge rusher. I mean, offensive line's fine. Running back, I'm not going to draft one at the end of the first. Jameer's definitely the guy who I would consider here. Tight end, no. Wide receiver, no. QB, no. So cornerback could be a potential spot. But I don't really see anybody who I would exactly take here, so I'm not going to do that to you guys right now. Garrett Williams is a beast, but we're going to go edge rusher here. Andre Carter, I'm a huge fan of. BGO Jolari, there's so many guys in this class. I'm a big fan of it. I'm going to go with, it's down to these two. I'm going to go with Felix. Felix gives the best tackles in the class problems, and I love that. He sometimes has a weird game where he sometimes struggles against mediocre tackles, but when it comes to him having to rise to the occasion, he does, and I think that's phenomenal. So he's going to do the same for the Philadelphia Eagles. So let me know what you guys think. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you on the far side. Peace.